Hello and welcome to the Catch a Lift Coaches Corner. I am Cal Coach and Program Director Melissa, and this week I'm honored to welcome retired U.S. Army veteran Jeremiah Pauley to today's show. Jeremiah is a retired U.S. Army veteran, Cal veteran athlete, and the new head coach of the Catch a Lift Fund. Welcome to this week's episode of the Coaches Corner. Jeremiah, welcome. Thank you for being here with us.
Is this real life right now?
This is real life. This is real life.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. Oh, this is so great. Thank you so much.
We're so excited to talk to you today, Jeremiah. Let's jump right into it. Will you start today by telling us a bit about your life growing up in Ohio and what would ultimately lead you to the United States Army?
Yeah, growing up in Ohio, Ohio's a big sports state. I was a big Cleveland fan of all the sports teams there. My dad loved watching sports, and I loved spending time with my dad. Football is obviously really big where I come from.
Oh yeah, definitely.
They taught me a lot
That's
about
football
football,
country.
Right?
Yeah.
Like people talk about Texas, and I'm like, no, let me tell you a little
Have
story.
you been to Ohio?
Have you been to Ohio? Yeah, 16. Like our stadium seats over 16,000. Our high school
Good
stadium.
grief.
The
high school?
Yeah,
Oh
the
my
high
gosh.
school. Yeah, and
All right.
if you were to be there on Friday nights, that's the way it was supposed to be. If you didn't play football, I was never big enough to play football. That's how serious it is. I was never strong enough or fast enough or anything like that. But I also grew up in a very patriotic home. With American flag was always around. My dad taught me about the Declaration of Independence, about the Constitution, and about these brave men and women who fought, defended, sometimes died for the rights and freedoms that we have as Americans. Where there was a lot of talk about values at our home growing up. My dad, I was raised in a Baptist home, and so whether I was helping out at church or with my neighbors, it was my dad instilling service, to me and my sister. And he would always say, if you're ever in the position to help someone, you should do it. And so it was that core value that
I
really,
love that. Wow.
right? Like I just this family, this blue collar family, like he was just the type of man that would give you the shirt right off his back. And I just was like, that's the way you're supposed to live life. Like
Yeah,
that's what
right.
that's what you should do, is help your neighbors. So whether I was raking leaves or shoveling snow, or led me to join the Boy Scouts who believe something similar, do a good turn daily, hanging out at the grocery store, helping people to their cars with their groceries. It was just that service that I just loved being a part of something so much bigger than myself. And when I was 17, I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to join the Army. Like that's where it's at, right? Like I can do that. Like I saw this pamphlet that the guidance counselor gave me, and it was a soldier rappelling down a tower, and the caption read, "A year from now, you'll wonder why it looks so hard." And I was like, I could do that.
Yeah,
I
for
could
sure. There
totally
you go.
do that,
Yeah.
right? Like, and inside it talked all about how the Army Reserve would pay for my college, and I'm like, oh, help mom and dad out, not
For
have to
sure,
take a
yeah.
loan. Like I could do it. So I got out of school that day, and I went to the Army recruiter's office and invited them over. And I remember walking into the house like, Dad, I know what I'm going to do. I got it figured out. And he's like, what? And I joined the Army Reserve. He was, did you tell your mom? I was like, no, like you're coming over tonight. And he was like, your mom's not going to be happy about that. And my mom, her brother served in Vietnam. And, we all know the stories of how terrible those heroes were treated when they came home.
For sure.
But the recruiter, he sat there in the living room that evening, and he told me everything the Army Reserve could do for me. When he had finished talking, he looked me right in the eyes, Melissa, like, what questions do you have? And I didn't even get a chance to answer. My mom, she stood up so quickly.
Yeah.
First of all, my mom would never just, you're not allowed into my home, right? Because she was very polite and very reserved. But that was the first time I'd ever heard her speak in this tone. And she looked at him and said, you can leave my house now.
Oof.
He got up and he left. Melissa, I never saw that guy again. Right? So, I was 17. I needed my parents' permission to join.
Yeah.
And my mom, both my parents, blue collar, worked in factories. And my mom said, you're going to college. End of discussion. I said, okay. So I started making the plans to go off to college, and the Army just became an afterthought to me.
Okay.
and
So,
graduated high school, and that's where I ended up going, was the University of Akron.
so what were you studying at Akron, and what would happen to lead you at that point to the Army?
I had decided that I wanted to study business. When I was 16, I worked in a small family-owned restaurant, and I was really intrigued by the way this small business operated. I just thought it was so neat the way these normal customers would come in and the owner would always greet them, and they'd order it off the special
Right.
menu or whatever, and I was in the back making that special menu, and I'm like, this is great. Like, I could do this, I can study business. Like, maybe
Yeah.
that's where I could see myself. So I decided to study business. But I also joined a fraternity. I lived probably a pretty sheltered life as a kid growing up, you know, like,
Oh
not
boy.
really
Yeah.
having a big social life. So college was
I bet
quite the
college was an
experience.
experience for you.
It,
Yeah.
it was, I had no idea that, people lived the way that they did and did the things that they did, And so when I joined that fraternity, I was like, oh, wow. And we were out supporting local businesses every night.
Right. Yeah.
And one day I received a letter from the university. They put me on academic probation. I wasn't studying. To be
Yeah.
honest, I was pretty bored sitting in that classroom, just listening to someone lecture and lecture. But I love the nightlife. I love the social
Yeah.
activity of it. But apparently, that's not what gets you a degree. So, but I was 20 years old, and I really thought I didn't want to go back and work in that pizza shop again. Maybe there's something else out there for me. And I had a few friends that were already serving in the army, and I started making phone calls, and I was like, "What do you think I should do? What's your advice for me?" When one of my buddies, Chris, he was like, "Dude, you got to go infantry."
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh yeah, I know. I remember reading about the infantry. That's like camping in the woods, like the Boy Scouts do."
Oh, I love
Like,
it. Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
He's like, "Yeah, of course, but and you get to carry a gun, dude. Like, how could you not want to do that?" And another friend, he said, "Well, you've got to go airborne." And I was like, "Oh, tell me more about that. What do you mean?" He's like, "The army will pay you extra every month to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. You get to wear this cool maroon beret that very few people get, and the amount of history that the airborne has in the army is just amazing. You're gonna love it." I said, "That sounds exactly like what I need to do." And I was like, "I'm 20 years old." So I went back to a different recruiting office, talked to a recruiter. I said, "I want to join." They sent me to the military entrance processing station. I took all the tests, and they said, "Okay, here's your contract, airborne infantry. Are you ready?" I was like, "Yep." And I signed. And I was scheduled to leave for basic training and AIT and airborne school 5 months later. But then I
Okay.
was like, "Oh, I got to go tell my mommy."
I was
Like,
gonna say, so what happened at home?
so my mom wasn't happy. She was disappointed, you know.
Yeah.
I was like, "Mom, look, you and Dad taught me about serving, about
Yeah.
being a part of something bigger. Like, this is my opportunity,
Right.
you know. Like, there's not a war going on right now. Like, I I can
Yeah.
go and really get some discipline, have some adventure, and learn some
Absolutely.
great skills, And plus, when I get done, I full intended 4 years and I'm done. Got some college money, go back to college, get a degree. But that definitely wasn't the case
Yeah,
because
that's not how that went, is it?
no,
Oh,
once I put that uniform on, Melissa, and graduated basic and AIT and graduated airborne school and went off to Fort Bragg, North Carolina at the 82nd Airborne Division. Oh wow, I was living then. I was blown away by these Army leaders, right? That they just trained you, mentored you, just taught you how to become
yeah.
the very best version of yourself. And here you are living in the barracks with all these other soldiers, and like all trying to become better, right? As one unit. And that was a relatively new concept for me, as opposed to just being this individual person. So I love this team dynamic and waking up and putting on the uniform. And when we had to wear our dress uniform, I remember busting out my ruler, making sure the measurements on everything was just so, making sure the crease was right exactly the way that it needed to be, shining my boots. That kind of ages me, I guess, right? Like shining
Yeah,
my boots
yep,
for like hours.
yep, the boots does. Yep.
Yeah, right. But it was just, I fell in love with serving the Army. I fell in love with serving my country. I love putting on that uniform every day. And I just knew that this is going to be my career. This is where this is my job for as long as the Army is going to have me. This is my job. I'm going to become a non-commissioned officer. I even remember thinking I'm going to lead soldiers into combat one day.
Did you think that?
That was my dream job, right? That
Okay.
because some of these leaders, they wore combat infantry badge, right?
Right.
On their uniform. And that was, 96, 97. So some had seen, action in Desert Storm, some in Panama from 89, some
Yep.
in Grenada, 83. There were actually some Vietnam veterans that were still serving.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I want that combat infantry badge. That's exactly what I want to do. And thought, yeah, jump out of an airplane into combat, go find some bad guys. Yes, that's what I want to do with the rest of my life. And so when it come time to re-enlist, there wasn't a question. It was, yep, I'm going to do it. Yep, I'm going to do it. And I love the Army. The Army took care of me. The Army taught me life lessons, surrounded me by amazing people, taught me leadership, taught me about the value of hard work, about teamwork, about values in addition to service. I loved it.
How would the Army change, and specifically maybe even for you, like how did you see kind of life in the Army change abruptly when 9/11 would happen?
It's almost as if there was an immediate shift between what it was like to be peacetime to, the country's going to war.
Yeah.
So everything from the way that we got up in the morning and did physical training, to the way that we went to the rifle ranges, to the way that we worked on our packing lists, all started to change. The way that we went to and did field training exercises, all changed. It was more intense. It was more real world scenario because we knew there was something happening.
Yeah.
Right. Up to then, it was, the Army in the late 90s was still really kind of training on this mentality of trench warfare and, jungle warfare, and not a lot of urban terrain.
I was going to say, urban combat, they hadn't really seen, I know I've read about that, and, through the 90s, and that's what the focus was, right? It was still that kind of old school trench warfare, and all of a sudden, 9/11 would happen, and the wars that would be born out of it, it was urban warfare, a lot of it.
Yeah.
When would you start seeing units around you getting deployed, Jeremiah? How soon after 9/11?
Wow. So I was stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia at the time. And I want to say it was probably the beginning of 2002 that we had heard a lot of different commotion. Fort Benning was an open post then. And so, anybody could drive on and off post, without having to stop at a gate, to show their ID. And I remember
something
there were a
to
lot
think
of
about
us,
now, right?
Who would just let anybody
Can you
on
imagine?
a military base?
Can you imagine? Oh my God.
Yeah. And so there were times where, we were working with the military police, setting up those roadblocks, and all right, we need to check your ID. All right, you don't have a military or dependent ID. What's your business here? Why are you here?
Right.
You're not a civilian contractor, or whatever the case was. Sorry, you can't have access to the base today. So we knew something higher than what we were aware of was happening.
For sure. Jeremiah, when you finally would get those orders, what do you remember about the days and final weeks leading up to when you would go deploy to Iraq?
I was actually at a different duty station before. I went from Fort Benning to recruiting duty in Mobile, Alabama, and because I was on Army orders, there was very little that I could do about it.
Okay.
And I just remember having so many friends deploy and deploy and deploy. I felt like I was being left out, I felt like
did, yeah.
I was like, all my friends, all these people that I know, my leaders, they're deployed. Some of them by 2005 were deployed twice. And, here I am sitting in Mobile, Alabama, safe in a small, relatively small town with roof over my head, 3 hot meals a day. I felt left out, but I knew that my time would come. But that's when I re-enlisted. I had a friend that was stationed in Germany. He said, I know that this unit is deploying to Iraq at the beginning of 2006. And so I re-enlisted and said, I want to go to Germany.
Yeah.
Because I knew that is when that unit would deploy. And so I arrived in Germany in, I think, September of 2005. And it was all the talk about what was going to happen when they deployed.
Yeah. So you would get that opportunity in 2006 to deploy. And you would deploy to Iraq, and you would be living in an Iraqi house. Talk to us, Jeremiah, about living in the house with 40 other men. Talk to us about what your mission was in Iraq with your unit.
The unit that we had replaced in Tal Afar had mentioned how successful they were by having a patrol base in a local Iraqi house. And so we had started that, and it was just for 24 to 48 hours. But then someone higher decided maybe we should just live there. And so our whole platoon, we were a mechanized unit. Our whole platoon decided, okay, everybody is a dismount now. And there was 40 of us in that platoon. We commandeered an Iraqi house and said, all right, this is where we're going to live. And we're going to do all of our missions from this house. We're going to do our patrols from here. We'll go meet up with the local Iraqi army and Iraqi police, who we were tasked with helping train. A lot of these Iraqi army folks, they didn't know how to go on a patrol throughout the city to look for bad guys.
Right.
The police weren't trained. They were just volunteers, basically. It was like, great, here's your badge and here's your gun, kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
So they didn't know how to do simple marksmanship. They didn't know how to go through and look for whatever it was that we needed to find, whether it was ammunitions that the bad guys were kind of holding on to, or they didn't really know how to be a presence in the city for safety. And so that was one of the things that we were tasked with, was teaching them how to do that in order to help the townspeople.
Jeremiah, what was the dynamic like between the U.S. soldiers and the Iraqi, again, whether it was, kind of police or soldiers, Iraqis that you were training? What was that dynamic like?
It was mostly friendly. Even though we had an interpreter, I still think there was a lot that was lost to just the language barriers, But whenever someone would bust out a cigarette, everybody was your friend, when we had, our MREs, they loved those MREs because
did they?
They loved them because their food quality wasn't as high as what we had. And so it was challenging in the sense that we couldn't communicate the way that we always wanted to. But it was also rewarding just seeing these people that really just wanted a better future for their country. They really just genuinely wanted to help their own family and their own country. And so it was really refreshing to see that, you get a lot of stuff from the media. You get a lot of stuff from the news that says, oh, these people do this and they do that. And it's like, they're just people.
Yeah, absolutely.
They just want what's best for their family and their country, just like we do. And so to be able to write home about experiences like that was really special.
That's incredible. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that with us, Jeremiah.
Yeah.
So you'd shared with us a little earlier, so when you were with the 82nd Airborne, and you started, you had these instructors and, different soldiers, higher ranking than you that you really looked up to, and you saw those combat infantryman badges and, you wanted and you knew someday you would lead men in combat. What was it like to be in Iraq now in 2006 and be leading men in combat?
I think that was my first dream job moment. I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was supposed to be doing, and there was no question in my mind about it. There was never, why are we here? What are we doing?
Right.
It was, we're here because our country needs us. And right now, our country needs us to help these Iraqi army and Iraqi police folks do their job. That's why we're here. And we're going to do it to the best of our ability. We're going to take care of one another. And when we're done, we're all going to go back home. That was the mentality, that we were there for a reason, and we were going to be the very best at doing our job.
Jeremiah, will you talk to us about April of 2006?
Yeah. Surprisingly, some people didn't want us there, if you can imagine that.
Yeah.
So in the house that we had lived in, we had been receiving some like indirect mortar fire. Basically, there was a main supply route not too far to the north of where we had lived, and a truck would pull up and set off their little homemade mortars and fire them in the direction of our home. And fortunately, nobody was ever hit. We never even found any civilian casualties. So that was miraculous that never happened. But it was just enough to be annoying, like that gnat in the middle of the night, like, So we had decided that, all right, we can go to the northern part of the town, put in a 2-man sniper team, and then the next time that truck drives up, sniper team's there, threat eliminated, we've done our job. Up to that point, we had been finding a lot of IED making materials, rocket propelled grenades that were handmade out of just plastic tubing and things like that, handmade grenades, all kinds of really bad stuff in empty houses. And so along the way on this patrol to move up to insert this sniper team, we were checking out empty houses. And I guess they found out that we love to be in empty houses. So we had stopped at one empty house, and most of the houses here in Talifar have this walled off courtyard in front. And I'd sent one of my teams into the house, and I said, go search, find what you can find. A bunch of us are, standing out on the street. And I went inside the courtyard to kind of help out. And Melissa, as I stood in that courtyard, one of my team leaders came into me and he said, what do you think about this 2-man team and what we've been finding? What are we going to do if we find something that we have to confiscate? We still have to get this 2-man team inserted today.
Okay.
And so we started talking about that for a little bit. But this thought just kept popping into my head. It's like, how lucky am I right now? Right? Like, how lucky am I? Like, wearing this uniform, surrounded by these men that would gladly give their life for me. And I would do the same thing for them, live my life for them. How lucky am I to be serving my country, right? Exactly. And again, thinking exactly where I'm supposed to be in my life. There's nothing that I'm supposed to be doing right now.
Right.
So one of my soldiers came up and said, hey, Sergeant, the house is clear. We didn't find anything. I gave a signal for everybody to go back outside. Stood there, took accountability, touching everybody one by one. I got all my guys, good to go.
Yep.
Empty courtyard. This is great. I love my job. I love my country. I get to serve. Nothing could be better than this. Turned, walked towards the door, and then boom, this loud explosion. And it just sent dust everywhere. And immediately my thought was, get ready for them to attack you.
Yeah.
Get ready. And so I'm thinking, oh, get your hand on your weapon. How come my hand's not going to my weapon? Why isn't my hand moving? And I looked down and my right arm was just hanging there. Blood all over my uniform, on my boots, piece of shrapnel had entered in above my right elbow, and like shock set in, and I started crying out for our medic, doc, top of my lungs, just crying out. They come back in, our medic, a few of my soldiers, and I'm going in and out of consciousness, and just losing blood, and they start putting a tourniquet on me, and just, what's going on? What's happening? Where is everybody? Is everybody okay? What's happening?
Yeah.
Who's in charge? I'm supposed to be in charge.
Yeah.
People tapping me on the forehead. Wake up, wake up. I'm like, who has got the balls to be poking me in the forehead? Right? Like,
yeah.
So I heard a helicopter nearby. Okay. They placed me onto a stretcher, started carrying me outside. And that is when I heard the three words that will just ring in my ears forever. Miss Oldine is dead. Private first class, Jody Wayne Misseldine. He was 19 years old. He had been in the Army less than a year. He was one of my soldiers, one of the men that I promised that I would help protect. And right then, Melissa, I knew that was my fault. His death was my fault. Because what do we do as leaders? We take responsibility for our actions and for the actions of those around us. And I knew right then, it's your fault. He's gone because of you. It was fairly quiet. There wasn't any small arms fire happening around. We had sent another platoon had gotten sent out to kind of back us up for what was happening. I was taken to a hospital in Mosul, carried into an operating room surrounded by doctors and nurses. And this doctor, he said, "Sit up. I need to cut your uniform off of you." Excuse me? Like, what? Like this, no, that's mine. You can't just cut my uniform off of me.
Yeah.
You know, like that, like this is, I earned this.
Yeah.
Like this, I put this thing on every day with pride. You can't just, and I sat up, and sure enough, I could just feel the scissors like going up my back, taking this thing off of me, you know, sticking to my right arm, you know, from where, you know, I had been bleeding.
Right.
And I lay back down and I felt this splash, this liquid on the back of my neck. And I asked the doc, I was like, "Why am I laying in water?" He never answered me. I was bleeding. I was bleeding out. I had lost that much blood that I could feel it splashing on the back of my neck.
Oh my gosh.
And I awoke later that night, and I had an external fixator sticking out of my right arm, holding it all together. And around my bedside, there were some senior officers and enlisted members. And they started attention to orders, presenting me with this Purple Heart. And I was like, you know, like somebody's like, Jody's dead, right? Like he's gone. You know this. Like I got a broken arm. Send me back. So like my guys need me, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm their squad leader. Like I got to get back there. So really, like the reality of what had happened really hadn't hit me, exploded to me, or I would spend a few days there in the hospital in Mosul, and then I was flown to Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany, and where I thought I was, you know, going to get taken care of. The wound in my arm was really big, and so they had to clean it out multiple times a day. I remember how painful it was to just have this cotton like jammed into my arm, and the pins that were drilled into the bones basically had to be cleaned with alcohol or whatever it was, and these little Q-tips, I guess. And I was there for, I think, for about 4 or 5 days as they were cleaning it out, making sure that I was stable, all my vitals were good, and you know, trying to make sure that I didn't, you know, suffer any type of infection or whatever because of the shrapnel, you know, that went into my arm. And one day the doctor, the head surgeon had come in, and I applaud him for being honest, because he said, "I'm not qualified to do what needs to be done to you." And I don't know what that means, man. Like, I got a broken arm.
Yeah,
like,
that's quite the thing to be told. I mean, what do you do with that? Yeah.
I'm still on this broken arm kick. Like, that's just cast me up, dude. Send me back. Like, I can sit there and man the radio. Like, it's fine. It's just a hole, right? Like, put some dirt in it or whatever. I'm gonna be okay.
Put some dirt in it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And still, the reality of what had happened, I don't think had really affected me the way that it did. And I remember someone had said to me, hey, because Jody's gone, you might want to talk to somebody. And I said, okay. And find me somebody to talk to. In 2006, a colonel, full-bird colonel came in. He was the hospital psychologist, I guess. He had sat down next to my bed, and, I started telling him what happened and about why I felt guilty and what was going through my head. He handed me a box of tissues, and he said, what do you want me to do about it?
Oof. Wow.
And I said, okay. So I just asked for help.
Yep.
From you,
right.
The psychologist.
Right.
And like, you're upset that whatever. I don't want you to do anything, sir. Thanks for your time. So I went off to Walter Reed, and within hours of being to Walter Reed, there was a surgical team inside my room, next to my bedside, telling me about the surgeries that I would need, the physical therapy, the bone grafting, the pins and plates they would have to put into my arm. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like, I've got a broken arm. Like, patch me up. And as I sat and listened to this doctor tell me about everything that I would need, I remember asking him, I have a kid on the way. Am I going to be able to play catch with my kid? And he said, you need to get used to the fact that there's a lot of things you can't do anymore. And I gave up right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I gave up. Like, well, if I can't play catch,
right.
Like, I mean, that's a really, bad, like, I'm from Ohio. Like, I might not have played football, but I know how to play catch, right? Like,
right. Absolutely.
That was a big deal for my father and I, playing catch. That's something I wanted to teach my kids. And just to be told that, I was devastated.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. Right.
What do you mean you can't? And so I really just adopted I can't as my new mentality.
What would happen after Walter Reed, Jeremiah?
I was at Walter Reed for about 3 months with surgeries and physical therapy, and then sent back to my duty station, which was in Germany. And I was placed on, what was called rear detachment. And they made me the family readiness group leader. So I was because I was the senior ranking NCO of that company that was back. I was the face of the forward deployed unit with an external fixator sticking out of my arm to all the wives
right
that were back there. And I felt just terrible, because I would, and none of them ever said this to me, but every time they looked at me, I got the sense that, why are you here and my husband's not?
I'm sure.
It was that guilt,
Right.
And
yep.
It manifested in ways other than not just surviving, but just being back at rear detachment. And Melissa, most of these people, when they would see me or talk to me about my injury and tell me that I'm blessed, even Franklin Graham came into my hospital room once and prayed with me. And it was great. Franklin Graham, grandson of Billy Graham, right? Like, awesome experience. But when I was like, hey, I lost this Jody Wayne Missildine, he's gone. Nobody ever said anything. Yeah. They just told me that I was blessed, right? They just, well, you're blessed. okay, well, what does that make Jody?
Right. Yep.
And no one could answer that. And so there was just this resentment in addition to the survivor's guilt. There was this hatred brewing inside of me that, okay, you keep telling me this, but nobody is talking about, nobody's even mentioning his name. Kept going through physical therapy and occupational therapy while I was back in Germany. And then later, the doctors would say, okay, it's time for your medical evaluation board. And I had no idea what that was. At the end of the medical evaluation board, they were just, matter of fact, guess what? You're no longer physically fit to serve the country, your country. What are you talking about? I'm no longer physically fit. Like, you gave me the surgery, you gave me the physical therapy. I can, here I am. I can serve my country. No, you can't make a fist. You can't squeeze a trigger. You can't do a push-up. You cannot serve in the United States Army any longer. Wow, just like that. Up to that point, almost 11 years, of my life. Just like that. Like, that's your time in the United States Army is done.
It's done. Jeremiah, this would be an incredibly difficult time for you for many reasons. Among the things during this time, you would also lose your father.
Yeah.
Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. It was 3 days after I got out of the Army.
3 days.
3 days. There was got a phone call, and I just remember the voice saying, "I'm sorry." Like, what are you sorry for? I don't get it. It's like, your dad's gone. Like, what do you mean my dad's gone? Like, how could my dad be gone? Come to find out, my dad was killed through medical malpractice, and that resentment and that hatred for doctors just grew even more. Even more. Just, it was magnified so much more now. Here it was, like this terrible experience that I had been through, and the person that I relied on the most taken from me. It's like all this stuff, like, that I had no control over. I think that was maybe the worst part, realizing how much I didn't have control of. Because as an Army leader, boom, you're making things happen. You're in control of the mission, of your soldiers, of movement, of all this. And now come to find out, I'm not in control of anything anymore. It just hurt. It hurt on an emotional level that no one could ever be prepared for, that no one could ever truly accept in the moment. And on the level to where it was like, why does this keep happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? Is it because I didn't bring Jody home? Is that why? Like, is this my penance now?
Jeremiah, talk to us about how you were coping and getting along during this time.
I was surrounded by family. So I wasn't alone,
right,
but I was truly lonely because no one had experienced anything like this before. So there weren't other veterans that I was around. There wasn't anyone that, had been to combat. There, wasn't really anyone who had lost their father in the manner that I did. So I didn't have anyone to talk to. I just kept it bottled up inside. I didn't have an outlet. I wasn't exercising because the doctor told me I couldn't.
Because you've
I
been told
didn't,
over and over by this point that there's all kinds of things you can't do. There's no more.
there's,
What
there's,
your normal was is gone. You had been
that's
told
gone.
over and over.
The normal that you were used
Yep.
to is gone. This is you now, and so there was no one saying, well, you could do this or you might try this.
Yeah.
There was no one there. There was no big support structure for any of that. It was just me and trying to learn how to become a stay-at-home dad to an infant daughter that was she was 8 months at the time by the time I got out of the Army. And it was difficult because through my own nightmares and, my own anxiety and depression, I still had to get up in the middle of the night, feed the baby, take care of the baby, change the baby, be a good dad. How do I be a good dad? My dad's not here to help me be a dad. Like, how do I do this? How am I supposed to do any of this? So there was no coping. It was just, this is your life and you have to deal with it. And if there was a coping, then it was alcohol.
Yeah. Jeremiah, how would you bring yourself back from this place of, negative thoughts, mindset, and decide, make that choice to move forward in a positive manner?
I met some pretty cool veterans that were doing some pretty neat things. One was, he was an arm amputee and he was out playing golf and exercising and doing all this stuff. And I'm like, why can't that be me? Like, why can't I do that? Right. And after some lengthy conversations, and I told him about the importance of my father to me. And he was like, what would your dad say to do? Well, nobody's ever asked me that before. He's like, well, what would your dad say? And my dad would say, get up and go serve. You're still in a position to help someone, so you can do that. And he would say, get up and keep going. And that kind of just popped into my head, right? Like, oh, is it really that simple? And so I started with these small little changes, right? Just small little things. Okay, today I'm going to go for a 20-minute walk with the baby. Tomorrow I'm going to go for a 30-minute walk run with the baby. Oh, by the way, I'm going to stop by someplace and see if I can volunteer some of my time. I'm going to seek out other veterans groups and see what they do, to see if there is people there that know what I'm experiencing, that right. have resources available, that have somebody that could mentor me, that I know what to do. I can help you. Let's go. And because I had become so negative about just everything in my life, people were like, you find ways to be more positive. Like, what can you do to be more positive today? Talk about being grateful. What are you grateful for? And in the beginning, that was very difficult because I thought, well, Jody got the better end of the deal. He's not suffering. Okay. Sure, Jody's not suffering, but he doesn't get to learn this lesson that you're about to learn. What are you grateful for? Well, maybe I'm grateful for that. Perfect. Be grateful for that today and don't worry about anything else. What about this baby over here? Yeah, she doesn't listen to orders like privates. Like, cool, right? Like, be grateful for that, And so it was just little steps every day of trying to find ways to be grateful, find ways to be more positive, and find ways to serve other people that truly started to waken me up inside. And those other veteran mentors would say, now keep building on that. Keep building on that. Find a new normal, but don't let this to where you were over here, like really bad, ready to take your own life.
Right.
That's unacceptable. So let's keep the building on what it is you did today.
That's absolutely tremendous, Jeremiah. Thank you for sharing that with us.
My pleasure.
One of the other things you shared with us that would really help you in your recovery is having the opportunity to go and spend some time with your brother Jody's family.
Yeah.
Would you talk to us about that experience and the healing that has brought to you?
I was scared. I was so scared to reach out to his family. But I had seen other people do similar things, reach out to
Right.
their families and how therapeutic it was for them. And I thought, they might hate me, but I'm never going to know unless I actually do this.
Right.
And the response that I received from them was overwhelmingly positive. I told them I wanted to come to town to meet them and to visit where Jody's laid to rest. They wouldn't even let me get a hotel room. They like, you come to my house.
Oh, it's so wonderful. Oh my gosh.
Spend the night here. Like, really? Like, just, yeah, spend the night here. We'll make you dinner. We'll cook for you. We'll invite our family over. You can meet everybody. Everybody wants to know. Everybody wants to hear from you.
Wow. What did that, and so even before you got there, when, you contact them and they're saying these things to you, and you'd spent all this time with such, tremendous guilt before you've even met them and how they're responding to you, how did that feel to you, Jeremiah?
It kind of, part of me felt really pressured, really pressured to, I don't know if I felt pressured to apologize, if I felt pressured to be this savior, I guess, so to speak. But it was nothing like that at all. When I walked into the house, Jody's grandfather showed me this curio cabinet where he has all these keepsakes and pictures of Jody, and talked about his time in high school and his graduation from basic training and just different things. Told me all about his life, how proud they were of him. And his grandmother just was, I'm so glad you're here. I just can't wait to talk to you. Eat, here's some food. Here's this, eat this, eat this. It's like, here's your room where you can stay tonight. But first, we need to talk.
Oh
Yep, I know. Yeah, wow. we do need to talk. She brought out this camcorder, a big old heavy kind that you used to put on your shoulder, and with a VHS tape, and she recorded, and I told him everything that I knew about Jody from, I remembered exactly the day that he showed up in Germany and all the way up until the day he was killed. And I just cried and apologized that I couldn't bring him home, and how sorry I was that here I am when it should be him. I wish he was here instead of me, and I would have taken his place. It was my fault. I was the leader. So it was therapeutic to get that off of my chest. To get that off of my chest and just share with them.
Yeah.
And so the next day I was able to visit where Jody was laid to rest and spend some quiet time there with him, just talking, about the impact he's had on my life and the impact he has had on everyone's life around him that was there that day, and how I love telling people about him. That my own family, everybody I run into knows who he is. I tell everybody about this bracelet that I wear that I never take off. I tell everybody everywhere I go about Jody. And afterwards, I took his family out to lunch, and we had really bonded, I think. And we just spoke about, the good things in life, about how precious it is to be alive. And I had promised, hey, like, I'll be in touch. I won't lose touch with you. I want to keep in touch with you. I want to keep this dialogue going. And as I left the restaurant and I was telling everybody goodbye, as Jody's grandfather stops me, and he starts pulling something out of his pocket and he starts to hand it to me. And I see that it's a gold star pin. You know, gold stars.
Yeah.
Gold stars are given to the families of the fallen. I can't take that. That's for family, sir. He said, you're my family now. I want you to have this.
Wow. Wow.
And as I held that pin in my hand and cried even more, he just put his hands on my shoulder and he said, let it go, son. It's not your fault. And I knew right then, that in addition to everything else that I do in my life, whether it's be a dad, be a volunteer, that my responsibility is to live for Jody. But there was a weight lifted off of my shoulders.
Yeah.
Right then. A weight that I had just carried for so long. And this anger and resentment that I had for being alive just went away like that. Just gone.
Wow.
Completely gone. And I think about that day often, and I wonder if I were in that position, would I be able to do the same thing?
Right.
To have that much compassion, for someone. And so that's one of the things I always pray for is compassion.
Yeah.
To just be like Jody's grandparents were to me.
That's absolutely incredible. Jeremiah, thank you so very much for sharing Jody Wayne Misseldine's light with us all, for telling us all about him. We can see him. If you're watching this on YouTube, behind Jeremiah's shoulder, you can see him on the wall. We thank God for such a great man, such as Jody, to lay down his life for this country. And thank you, Jeremiah, for the work you continue to do within our veterans community and for your service to our great country.
Thank you.
I want to shift gears here a little bit, Jeremiah, and I want to talk about your fitness, which has been such a tremendous part also of your recovery these last years. And we talked about, you grew up in Ohio. Ohio is, not only football, but it's such a sports-centric state and everything. How would you come to a point where you'd become involved with CrossFit?
Yeah, great question. My wife and I, actually met in a gym. And
that's so cool. I love that. I love that.
It is. It's really cool. It's really neat. Was just something that we both enjoyed. And, through all the ups and downs of life, fitness was something that was always there for us. And we had both had friends that were CrossFitters doing CrossFit.
Yeah.
And it was New Year's Eve, 2016. We were talking about New Year's resolutions and how we were going to get fit this next year and really take it serious and stop eating the pizza and the cheeseburgers.
Yep.
And we're like, well, what about that CrossFit spot that's here in town? I don't know. It's kind of intimidating. No, let's go check it out. So it was on New Year's Eve. It was the afternoon. And we said, all right, let's go just check it out. Let's see if there's anybody there. So we went and we met one of the coaches. And I was a little intimidated just because of my own abilities. And I said,
right.
I don't want to be treated different, but I want to do what everybody else is doing. He's like, don't worry about it. I got you. And he told me about, the different types of scaling and adaptions. And I was like, that sounds pretty interesting. Yeah, let's do it. He was like, yeah, class is tomorrow at 6 a.m. I was like, wait, what?
Back up here.
like for real? Tomorrow's New Year's Day.
Oh, shoot.
Who goes and works out on New Year's Day at 6 a.m.? He's like, we do, and you're going to be here at 6 a.m. I looked at my wife. I was like, well, I thought we were going to be drinking till midnight tonight, but I guess
plans are changing quickly.
I guess our plans change. Yes, rapidly, big time. So we went back home and was like, all right, I guess, we should eat some dinner and try to get rested up for
awesome.
6 a.m. CrossFit class. So we showed up and he started talking about a bunch of words that I didn't understand. It was like benchmark workout and this movement and a thruster this. And I'm like, what have I gotten myself into? Why am I here? So our first CrossFit workout was Fran, which if you do it as this, prescribed method is 21, 15, and 9. And those are reps of pull-ups and thrusters. And I was like, what? Like, why would anybody do this? Like, why
would anyone do this?
And so he heavily scaled it back for us, so that we could work out that morning with everyone else. But all these other people there were cheering us on. Yeah, you can do it. Great job. Good on you. Yeah, you're doing great. Don't stop. Don't stop. Keep going. Keep going. And I just remember looking at my wife like, what is going on? Like, why are these people like cheering and clapping for us? And it reminded me of the Army. Going through the obstacle course and all your buddies are down there yelling at you, screaming at you.
Yeah.
Keep going. Don't stop. You got it.
Yep.
Watch your step. Do this. And that's what it reminded me of. So it was really, really exciting. And so we had finished and I felt like, oh my God, like, I can't believe I just did that. And we were like, okay, that was cool. And so he's like, so we'll see you tomorrow? And I was like, yeah, you'll see me tomorrow.
That's awesome.
And so that began our love of CrossFit. And I joined like the Open that year. They told me about the CrossFit Games and the Open. And I'm like, ooh, a competition. That sounds cool. Like, excuse me.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
Jeremiah,
it was great. I loved it.
What would take you from that first class, right? And you had an incredible experience. You experienced that community and everything, but that's a long way from going to that to deciding you're going to become CrossFit Level 1 certified, which you would do. Talk to us about kind of how that came to be or what led you to want to do that.
I became really fascinated with the coaching style. And so I would ask the coaches after the class, like, why did you say it like this? What does this mean? Explain this to me. Because it was reminiscent of the Army. It was reminiscent of the NCO standing up in front of a class and saying, our tasks, conditions, and standards.
Right, right.
That is amazing to me. And so I fell in love with this methodology of not just CrossFit, but just the way that it was taught. And so through all the coaches there, I would always ask, why is your coaching style like this, but this person's coaching style is like this?
Right.
Why? And just constantly asking questions and learning. Why when you do that movement, does it look like this? And this person does it and it looks like this. Just constantly trying to inform myself to be better when I'm in there, but also the way that everyone was treating me. If there's someone new that come in and the coach was working with a different person, maybe I could say, help out a little bit. Oh, your toes should be like this, or try your hand in this position. And it was just so similar to being an NCO in the Army that I was like, I want to do that too.
Yeah.
I can do that too. Like, I can learn how to be a CrossFit coach and have an impact, in my community, in this gym, the way that they are having an impact on me. This is my pay it forward. Like I can do
That's so
this.
cool.
Right. And it was like, it just seemed a natural progression, I think, to be, to come in and learn and be like, this is one of the coolest things ever. And be like, all right, now if I can use my experience as an NCO and knowing how to stand up and teach a class, I can learn the fitness aspect of it and teach a group about an exercise or about a workout of the day. And so that's kind of where it came from. I was like, that's what I want to do. And it seemed like just such a natural fit for me.
Yeah. That's terrific. Good for you, Jeremiah. I love that. And it sounds almost like, again, when you're describing exactly how you described at the front end of this episode, right? Your time coming into the Army. And I mean, they mirror each other so much in your story.
Yes.
Kind of your reaction to it and your reaction to the cadre and whatever capacity they were, whether that was at the CrossFit box or, on the base. That's fascinating. I've talked to, a lot of people about CrossFit, but I don't think anyone's likened it to the military in quite that same way, kind of explained it. So thank you for going through that with us.
Sure.
Jeremiah, talk to us about FitOps and your desire to continue to pursue fitness and nutrition certifications.
Right before the pandemic happened, my wife and I had decided that we were going to start outfitting our garage with just exercise equipment and, have our own little home gym.
Yep.
And obviously we did it, nobody knew what was going to happen. And so we were very fortunate to be in a position to, have this equipment like in our garage as gyms all over our area were shutting down.
Yep.
And then as schools were shutting down, and I had my own kids at home with really no outlet, it just became another opportunity. And so my wife and I thought, well, if we're experiencing this, we know that we're not alone. And if we're not alone, then where are all these other people going to get the types of exercise that they need? And so through some of our volunteering in and around Sacramento, I knew some parks and people that ran certain places, and I was calling like, I'm going to bring some veterans over to work out. And they're like, no, you're not. Like, places shut down because of Corona. Like, you can't just show up. Don't do that. Like, we're not gonna touch each other. We're just gonna be together in a group. We'll stand apart. Like, just my brothers and sisters need to work out. Let's do it. Like, do you even have a certification? And at the time, I didn't have any. I was like, well, no. And they're like, well, then you definitely can't do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So I started searching around the internet for just different certifications that I could use that would help not only my family and I, but people that were very similar to us, because that was the community that I understood.
Right.
The stay-at-home parents and the veteran community, right? I could relate to them and be like, this is why we need to do it, without having to go into like a big sales pitch about like why you should work out and like these are the people that. And so I come across FitOps, a nonprofit that helps veterans earn their certified personal trainer certification. And at the time that I had applied, it was not everything was completely crazy and shut down, but like it was getting there. And so, once I applied and then everything went really bad, I was like, well, that's probably never going to happen. Like, nobody's ever going to get together in person ever again, right?
Yep.
So I already had my CrossFit date, selected, and that was fortunate enough for that to happen. And so ended up going to FitOps earlier this year after a lot of rescheduling and what they were allowed to do, and earned my certified personal trainer certification. My wife and I were very interested in getting our nutrition certification. So we found a great organization to help us do that, all with the mindset, like, this is who we are going to help, and we can do it right here in our own community.
That's tremendous. Jeremiah, you're also getting...
Excuse me.
Okay. Jeremiah, you're also getting ready to embark on your CrossFit Level 2 certification. Talk to us a bit about what that means to you.
It's really exciting. Obviously, it's very exciting.
Definitely.
One of those coaches that, I referenced earlier, when my wife and I first started CrossFit, I remember the discussion we had several years ago, and he had already been through the Level 2, and he's an affiliate owner now. And he's someone I consider not only a close friend, but a mentor. But I'll never forget what he said, Melissa. He said, I had no idea what I didn't know.
Wow.
And I was just like, wow, you're one of the better coaches I think that I've ever seen. And listening to you explain things on just a variety of different levels to different people based on their understanding,
right.
There were things you didn't know. And he goes, oh yeah, so much. He goes, the course was phenomenal. And so I'm going into it with that mindset of,
that's tremendous.
I am going to learn so much and be able to use it, hopefully, right, to just pay it forward again, to teach other people. So it's definitely very exciting. Obviously, I think when you get into a group learning format like that, it's normal to be a little bit nervous,
Oh, yeah.
Because new people, and maybe you might not get along with everybody or whatever, right? It's just human behavior. But it's definitely exciting. But that mentality, I think, is gonna be what really carries me through.
Oh, absolutely. I know you're going to do tremendous at it, and I'm so very excited for you to get to have this experience and hear about it on the other side.
Yeah.
Jeremiah, will you talk to us a little bit? And it's been building here a while, right, in our conversation, but talk to us about the desire you had to make fitness and wellness a career.
Yeah, because it really like a career change for me. Like I said, for my wife and I, it was something that was always there, right? It was always the thing that brought me back.
Yeah.
Always the thing that if I ate crappy for a month, it was always the thing that brought me back to, okay, motivate me to eat healthier, right? Yeah. The gym never once said, you're not physically fit enough to be here like the Army did, right? Yep. The gym was always welcoming, like, yep, I got you, right? Like, yep. No matter what gym I went to, no matter who was there, if I needed help, there was somebody there saying, I got you. This is what you can do. And for me, that's like the never give up mentality, right? Because here you have this thing supporting you. It's always going to be there,
yeah,
right, in some form or other. And so for me, it was just like, if I truly want to live that never give up mentality, and I want to do something that's exciting for me, that helps get me out of bed in the morning, yeah, then it should probably be in the fitness industry. It should be doing something that I know is going to help people live healthier lifestyles, overcome their demons, be better people in their community, be better parents that aren't playing with their kids for 5 minutes and then be out of breath and have to take a break. Why? Because that's just some of the things that it's done for me. So that's just part of the reason why I wanted to be in this industry.
Jeremiah, you are Catch a Lift's new head coach. How do you feel about the opportunity to give back to your brothers and sisters through Catch a Lift's 4 pillars of nutrition, fitness, community, and emotional wellness?
It still sounds unreal to say. That's why I kind of was like, oh my goodness. It still sounds unreal to say. It's an amazing opportunity, and I really hope that I'm able to do for the role what I know the role has done for so many of our brothers and sisters. Be impactful. I hope that I'm able to add value, and not in a selfish, arrogant way, but to bring something to the role that is unique, but I also know that the position is really neat in itself because of the amount of people that support it and that surround it. So I hope that I'm able
Absolutely.
to learn from all of those other coaches and all of the other the headquarters team from Cal about not just the organization, but about service, about how they make an impact, about what the role means to them, about what it means to them to be a part of something bigger than themselves. So I think that's like the three big things for me is treat it well, to help my brothers and sisters, to add value to it, and wake up every day with the mentality that I'm going to learn something from somebody on this team.
Thank you, Jeremiah. And I know I speak for everyone when I say we are so very excited and happy to have you in this position. We've been blessed to have you as a member of our Catch Lift family, as a veteran athlete for a couple years now, but the fact that we get to, have you on our team in this capacity is just absolutely tremendous. And so we were all so very excited to look into 2022 with you and get that moving forward. If there's is there one thing that you're kind of really looking forward to with Cal in 2022, Jeremiah, or is it just kind of it all as a body of work?
A lot of us, and I'm pretty sure you would agree with it. A lot of us veterans, have that person or persons that we say, because of them, I didn't give up.
Oh, yeah.
I aspire to be that.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm looking forward to that impact that I know this organization is going to have. And I mean, that's only like part of it, right? That's only just like a small part of it because like I said earlier, with that mentality of I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we all just take that one moment from every veteran that we interact with, not just veteran, but the civilians that are on our team too, and allow ourselves to learn from them, something that makes us a better person, that's it, right? I think if you're doing that, if you're just learning from the people around you every day and learning from the people that you're trying to serve, you're doing something right.
100%. That's beautifully said. So, Jeremiah, for any of our Catch a Lift veteran members listening, how can vets reach out and get more involved with Catch a Lift or kind of re-engage, even if it's been a few years since they've been real active with the organization?
People can get in touch with me through my email address, which is jpauley@catchaliftfund.com. I also would highly recommend everybody get in through their Cal dashboard, the Vet connect with me and some of the other coaches there, where we put out some great information and motivation and some workouts and things like that. And through the next year, that is going to be really the central hub for all of us to stay connected.
Absolutely. And man, are we looking forward to what that has to bring for us all in 2022.
Big time.
Jeremiah, I have one last question for you today.
Yes.
This is the big one now, right, of the show. What does it mean to you to be a Catch a Lift Fund veteran athlete?
There's some pretty famous people that are Cal veteran athletes, right?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Like most people know, right? Trying to I think maybe live up to isn't the right way to say it, but to kind of be what they are and encompass the way that they live their lives, right? Obviously I would name a couple, but I don't want them to get the big head either, right?
I think it's safe to say, right? It's a pretty hallowed group, Catch a Lift veteran athletes, man.
It really is. So it's you got big shoes to fill, right?
For real.
There's big shoes to fill because some of these people, you can see in exercise competitions on television, right? You can't, and you get to work with these folks and ask them advice and be a part of their lives and share stories about service and camaraderie. So it's all inspiring, right? It's like, going to my kids and, my kids saying like, why are you doing that? Oh, because this person is. Look at this person on the TV do this. That's why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Oh, you know that person? Yeah. Like, right. Like,
Yeah.
It's awe-inspiring, I think, to be a Cal veteran athlete. It really is, because of just the amazing people that have come before.
Absolutely. Beautifully said, Jeremiah. Jeremiah, thank you so very much again for your service to our great country, for coming on, sharing your light with us all today. It was absolutely tremendous, and we cannot wait for 2022 and all that it brings for you individually, for Catch a Lift as a family, and it's going to be great. It's going to be great.
Yeah, it's exciting. Thank you, Melissa. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. That's it for this week's episode of Coach's Corner. We will return next Wednesday at 1 Eastern Time with another episode. Thank you, Jeremiah, for sharing your story and your light with us all. Thank you to ID Technologies for your support of this podcast. Thank you to Lynn Coughlin, Henry Pomper, and Kaylee Nasiri for all of the work you do to make this podcast possible week after week. And we thank the entire Catch a Lift team. Don't forget to join us every Wednesday live at 1 p.m. Eastern on YouTube for a chance to win Cal swag and to chat with your brothers and sisters. Until next week, keep it real and stay Cal strong.